Scholars, the Rector of St. Charles Centenary, Reverend Father Davis Thomas, PSTP, and Reverend Sister Daniela to come over to the stage.
Calabria.
Hi Priya, what are you trying to tell our distinguished guests?
I was just trying to tell them about our family. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce you to our guests.
Never mind Priya, I'll do that myself. Honorable guests, I'm Sonal Chaudhary, doing my 12th at SFS Junior College and have been a Calabrian for the last 9 years. By the way, do you know how our family's farm formed? How one becomes part of it and who its members are?
Father Calabria tells anyone who spent some time, even an hour, in our house is already a member of our family. And this evening, you two, my dear guests, have come over here to spend a few hours with us.
And of course, to part of our family and to join with us. We consider it a privilege and blessing to be part of this spiritual family founded by Jesus through Father Calabria.
We invite and welcome all of you to this evening's function and to join our family
as we celebrate 100 years of its existence. We also consider it our privilege and mission to let you know more about our family and what wonders divine providence has been working since last 100 years through our family.
And we now take you along the footsteps of divine providence that we have trodden for the last 100 years. Once again, you are most welcome to our family. And here we go.
Thank you, parents, for your service. This is indeed the plan of God.
the poor servants and their mission. Even though St. John Calabria nourished throughout his life a very ardent missionary spirit, he couldn't fulfill in his lifetime the dream of sending religious to mission lands, except for a brief stay in India from November 1934 to August 1936. The poor servants of Divine Providence would have to wait for more than 20 years to restart talking about mission. This time, however, in a more lasting way. In fact, it was on 17th June 1959 that 4 priests and 2 brothers set off for Salto, Uruguay. 3 months later, a small community took charge of the little church of Santa Cruz, which later on in 1961 became a parish.
But Uruguay showed itself to be quite an arid land for vocations. The Divine Providence then led us across the borders with Brazil, and on 30th August 1961, a new community was born in the city of Porto Alegre, southern Brazil, formed by 2 priests and 1 brother of those 6 missionaries who were in Uruguay. The first activity in Brazil was a professional center in exactly the same way as Father Calabria used to have in the beginning of the congregation.
A professional center in our congregation is a place where we try to get children and youngsters prepared to face life and have a better future. These formation centers have been present in our congregation since the very beginning, as Father Calabria had soon understood that it wasn't enough to give the children of his time food and shelter. We try, therefore, to provide them with a qualified preparation in the cultural and professional fields, but also a solid basis for human and Christian values. We usually have a school attached to the complex in such a way that the children and youngsters can remain with us the whole day and take part in many different activities.
More often than not, our PSDP sisters are nearby these centers and play a very important role, especially in the education of girls by teaching them painting, embroidery, sewing, cooking, catechism, etc.
Shall we take a look at one of our centers? We have many of them spread over the world, but now we will take you to Brazil and show you around the educational center St. Joseph.
This center is in northeastern Brazil in a city called São Luís. There are at present 3,500 children and youngsters benefiting from our courses. Many of them hail from the slums of the outskirts of São Luís. Some of them were abandoned by their parents. We have their 2 main structures. Lar São João Calabria, a kind of hostel for children in a risky situation who in a second moment get to know and take part in the activities offered by the educational center St. Joseph. In this center, we have 711 students attending primary school, 1,040 attending high school, and 1,054 benefiting from our professional courses.
The courses offered are
mechanics, carpentry, computing, tailoring, and others. For each course, there are specialized trainers. The students and trainees are also given psychological and pedagogical accompaniment, as well as medical and dental checkups and treatment.
Vai ter que se expor, não poderá guardar. Eu sei que o lavrador, se pensa na vida, tomba a terra pra semear. Imaginar o além exige amor pra se cuidar. Se a flor a gente tem, os frutos poderão chegar. É o tempo quem diz, colheita feliz é aquela que se faz somente uma vez. Se alguém descobrir, não vai se conter, e a terra inteira vai querer semear. Pra se falar de amor, prosa esquecida. Vai ter que se expor, não poderá guardar. Eu sei que o lavrador, se pensa na vida, tomba terra pra semear. Imaginar o além exige amor pra se cuidar.
Work and formation are integrated with art and recreational activities.
Pra se cuidar. Se a flor a gente tem, os frutos poderão chegar. É o tempo quem diz, colheita feliz é aquela que se faz somente uma vez. Se alguém descobrir, não vai se conter, e a terra inteira vai querer semear.
There are 3 sources of income to run the activity: a partnership with the State Ministry of Education, a distance adoption program, and the center's earnings through the work done in the various workshops.
O amor é como a chuva que fecunda e faz nascer sementes de esperança, vida nova faz crescer.
As we have reached Brazil, we would like to present before you a Portuguese song, Corango Se Foi, by Norbert and Maria Paul. Enjoy.
1993 was an important year for the congregation, especially for two reasons. First, we had the first batch of Brazilian novices, and second, because the charism of the poor servants once again crosses international borders and gets, this time to Buenos Aires, Argentina. The first activity over there was a professional center too.
But our presence in Latin America wasn't to stop in Argentina. In 1980, at the invitation of the Bishop of Altamira, the poor servants of Divine Providence took over the first parish in Colombia. 5 years later, 1985, it was the turn of Paraguay. There, the Divine Providence called us to take care of street children right from the beginning. We have 2 big hostels for both boys and girls in Ciudad del Este. The girls are taken care of by our PSDP sisters and the boys by our PSDP brothers, and an Italian couple who have been voluntarily working there for over 10 years.
We would now enjoy a Spanish song, La Bamba. This song is sung for us by the young Calabrians from Centenary.
In 1995, the congregation was invited to work in Concepcion, about 500 kilometers away from the capital, Santiago. That city has become, over the last decades, a very attractive place for peasant farmers who have come over there from all over Chile in search of job and a better life. They have settled on the outskirts of the city, and the consequences, needless to say, are degrading. The most affected are the children who remain idle during the whole day, as their parents have to go for their daily toil.
In that context, the Catholic Church, moved by those people's plight, took initiative to create the Children's Town, Ciudad del Niño. It's a big area of land with small houses in which 420 children are accommodated in small family houses, each of them under the care of a couple. These children are sorted into age groups of 10 to 12 members. This is an alternative to the traditional boarding in an attempt to give these children back their identity, self-worth, and their right to grow in a decent and adequate place. Furthermore, the family atmosphere, as a consequence of the discovery of God as Father, is a very characteristic element of a Calabrian-style educational action. St. John Calabria used to say that most of the people's problems come up when they feel abandoned. when they don't feel loved or when they cannot experience what a true family is. The problems are solved when a family environment is created, when there is a home and love in it. Besides Chile, we have some other experiences of that kind in the Philippines and in Brazil. This kind of experience is also being developed in Fetri, Nagpur, even though with different features. The early 80s witnessed our arrival in the African continent. The first male poor servants of divine providence got to Angola in 1982 and the first sisters in 1986. There, the divine providence did challenge our charism to be fathers and mothers, to witness to God's love and care, to be signs of hope and joy in the midst of the battlegrounds. Angola, like many other African countries, was going through a civil war, and so many were left behind as orphans, handicapped, homeless, landless, etc. The first invitation was to take over a diocesan seminary in Uíche and 2 years later in Benguela. But soon the congregation started with schools and hostels for children. In 1984, we got to Luanda, the capital, where, besides a big school, we built a hospital of ample proportions, supported by 4 more medical units spread around it. During the Civil War, this was the last resort of the poor, who obviously couldn't afford any kind of treatment or medicine. Throughout this tough time of war, which lasted as long as 2002, brothers and sisters were without any shadow of a doubt, a family and a clear sign of God's care and love towards the Angolan people. Today, the situation has improved a great deal, but some of the consequences of the war are still very much felt by the people, and the side effects are seen all over the country. Would you like to get to know a little more about Angola? Shall we go on a tour round our hospital in Luanda? Ready? Okay, fasten your seat belts. Here we go. This is the director, Michele Pazzetto, and he will show us round Divine Providence Hospital and its units.
The hospital has been running since 1994 and was born as a response of the congregation to the pressing demands in the field of healthcare in the last years on account of the war. In fact, we have witnessed a huge and steady flow of refugees from the country to the capital in search of a better living, thereby escaping the war. But all this has taken place without any planning. So, those people have occupied all the possible places over Luanda, giving rise to a great number of overcrowded slums. This is a schematic map of Kirambakiashi, our quarter. These are our 4 medical units, circled in blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the hospital, the central unit. It's just to show how it is planned and inserted in an area of 20 square kilometers. And here, the estimated beneficiaries are 1,80,000. Well, as I said before, The Divine Providence Hospital consists of these 4 external healthcare units, which are the first medical reference to the sick. When someone falls sick, he or she goes to one of these units, is seen by a nurse, often a PSTP sister, and thus a first selection is made taking into account the urgency of the case. Then he or she is taken in and given the necessary medical assistance. In these units, we offer pediatric examination, general practice, obstetric care, and guidance to pregnant women, vaccination, checks on children's growth, weight, nutrition, etc. In fact, we cannot get a clear idea of the impact of Divine Providence Hospital unless we appraise the work done by these units, because they are the main reference, the first aid given to the sick and in the most needy areas close to their houses. As for the most complicated cases, they are referred to the central unit, where there is an ample possibility of diagnosis, a good laboratory, X-ray lab, specialized examinations, and about 5 doctors ready to examine both the patients and outpatients. Then it is up to the doctor to decide whether to have someone admitted or not. Our complex consists of a children's ward with 36 beds, a nutritional center with 8 beds, and an adults ward with 50 beds.
Encontrei uma preta que estava a chorar, pedi-lhe uma lágrima para analisar. Recolhi a lágrima com todo cuidado, num tubo de ensaio bem esterilizado. Olhei de um lado, de outro e de frente, tinha um ar de gota muito transparente. Mandei vir os ácidos, as bases e os sais, as drogas usadas em casos que tens. Ensaiei a frio, experimentei ao lume, de todas as vezes deu-me o que é costume. Nem sinais de negro, nem vestígios de ódio, água quase tudo e cloreto de sódio. Ai, 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 la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la la la, la 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 la, ai, 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 ai. Ambulangi kala baba, kandala mitopia, kandala kukala kala, mwenengi sota kwebye, mwenengi sota kwebye, kala kala wale, mwenengi sota kwebye, kala kala wale, ngala kyani jisonyi, akwetu alongilenga.
Stepping to the tune of Ajana Children.
Thank you.
Besides our hospital, we would like to show you also one of our schools in Angola. It's in a village called Uambo, 600 kilometers from the capital. We have a primary school and a small hostel called Happy Children.
I am Father Abel Chrles Auditorium, PSDP. I work here in Uambo, Angola, and at present I am in charge of this work we have begun, of the structure where we welcome children from both the streets and families in difficulties, especially after war. I would like to show you around the center, the realities we have over here. Well, here we have some children who live and study, boarding children, and some children who just come for classes. This is a primary school. On my right side, we have classes from 1st to 4th, and on my left side, 2 first classes and 1 second class. Good morning. How are you? Today there is someone who wants to meet you. They are from very far and they want to see you. They want to know how you are behaving, whether you are studying well or not. You are studying well, aren't you? Who is going to pass this year? Very good. Who is going to fail? Nobody? Good. They want to see all of you passing this year. So these are our first class children. They hail from families in difficulties, and all of them have suffered a lot the experience of war. And we do wish them to become good citizens, great men and women of the future. We need to thank the congregation of St. John, Calabria too for having opened the doors to these children. We have at present 240 students in our school. 30 of them are in the boarding and 210 come from their homes. There is an office where we, the religious, work, make projects, write emails, keep in touch with organizations. And next to it, the refectory where children eat, study and do some recreational activities, especially when it rains, because Uambo is a place where it rains a lot.
The 90s was the decade in which the poor servants reached the Asian continent. The Philippines were the first country to open its doors to our first missionaries, who arrived on 26 March 1990. Consisting of about 7,100 islands and islets, the Philippines have a population of about 80 million people. Besides suffering very often natural disasters such as volcanic eruptions, floods and typhoons, the Philippine people also face some problems like unemployment, high population growth, corruption, illiteracy, and one of the highest incidents of poverty in Southeast Asia, 40%.
dasal, sana'y di magbago ang damdamin mo at ang iniisip mo lang ay ako.
The congregation of the poor servants is present in 3 cities of the Philippines, in Manila, the capital, in Calbayo, on the island of Samar, and in Cagayan de Oro, on the island of Mindanao.
Dahil puso ko'y nasanay na palaging ikaw ang nais makita, ganyan lagi ang aking nadarama.
In Manila, we work in the parish of San Lorenzo Ruiz, a very poor quarter, where about 160,000 people live in. Next to the parish, the congregation runs a primary school for about 400 children. These children are helped through a distance adoption program.
At lagi kong dasal, sana'y di magbago ang damdamin mo at ang iniisip.
In Cagayan de Oro, on the island of Mindanao, the congregation has 2 houses for street children. One of them is on the seashore, whereas the other one is by one river towards the center of the island. Both the houses are furnished to accommodate 20 girls and 20 boys respectively.
Iiwanan ako at may papalit na sa akin. Palaging ikaw ang nais makita, ganyan lagi ang aking nadarama. At bakit ikaw ang siyang minahal at aking inibig ng tunay? Huwag mo lamang.
But it was also in the 90s that our congregation first set foot on Russian soil. On 15th October 1992, the first religious left Italy for Russia, and in 1993, we started an activity in Rodnisyok, a forest area 40 kilometers away from Moscow.
After the breakup of the former USSR in 1991, rampant inflation destroyed the population saving and created the framework for massive increases in inequality. To get an idea, someone who retired in 1990 with enough money to live modestly for 20 years at the old prices, mostly unchanged for more than 20 years previously, would find by 1996 that his or her life savings would barely stretch for a couple of days, with no indexation or compensation for lost savings. Today, we can clearly identify in Russia 2 different worlds that hardly come into contact with each other. One, the world of wealth and luxury, is inhabited by an insignificant minority. The other, the world of social decline and an arduous struggle for life's necessities, is inhabited by millions upon millions.
In Russia, we have an activity with children, namely some professional courses and spiritual guidance to both individuals and groups that come to our center. Even after many years under the socialist regime, the Catholic faith, though hidden because of persecutions, remained strong and unshakable. Being yeast among these people, even though we are just a few, is another feature of our spirituality and charism.
Still in Eastern Europe, 1997 was the year in in which Father Calabria's spirit got to Romania. Years of oppressive rule and a Soviet-style economy left Romania with an obsolete and inadequate industrial base. Progress towards a stable market economy has been slow and difficult. Real wages for working Romanian families have dropped by about 40%. In addition to the economic toll, Romania faces the challenge of thousands of children orphaned under the previous communist regime.
We are in a town called Chrles near Bacău, eastern Romania. There we have a formation house along with an activity with the poor children of that area. In Western Europe, we are present only in Italy. Besides, having an all-special meaning for having been our founder's native land, the divine providence has called us to render our service in many realities also over there. We are present in some parishes, professional and rehabilitation centers, prison ministry and activities with children hailing from either broken families or immigrants who come to Europe in search of job and a better living.
Our children from the Calabrian home are here before you to sing for you one of the most famous songs of Italy. The song is Volare, meaning to fly. Hope you'll enjoy.
We will now take you to Milan and show you around one of our centers.
Tra le case e i grattacieli, tra le antenne lassù in alto, così trasparente il cielo non l'ho visto mai. E la luce getta veli di colore sull'asfalto, ora che cantate assieme a me. È più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente. È più bello insieme, è più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente. È più bello insieme.
This is Vismara Center, situated in southern Milan. It is a sports center that came to us through the Diocese of Milan, in which the Congregation of the Poor Servants develops various activities. we can divide them into 4 areas. The sports or structural area, in which, besides welcoming many teams or clubs that come over here for training or just for sports, we have 2 teams of our own, one of basketball and one of football, so as to teach and form through various sports too. Then there is educational area, which consists of various activities in 2 communities for inmates, one for disabled and one for minors. And then 2 day centers, very variegated in the same way, one for disabled and one for minors. Next, we have the section for rehabilitation. We work on the rehabilitation of children from 0 to 18 years who have physical or communicative difficulties or problems. So, physiotherapy, hydrotherapy, psychomotor activities, logopedy, alternative communication and music therapy. Finally, there is the pastoral area, which, besides looking after the formation of the collaborators of the center, takes care of some other activities, such as a group of couples who have been gathering for many years, a biblical group, a prayer group, and other activities with parishes or groups that come here for some time of spirituality.
Bella gente che mi sfiora, quanta vita di attese di felicità, quanti attimi vissuti, mondi da scoprire ancora, splendidi universi accanto a me. È più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente.
We are representatives of the DCD, which stands for Day Center for the Disabled. We daily work with about 30 children and or youngsters who are differently able. They arrive at our center at 8:30 in the morning and leave it at 3:30 in the afternoon to go back to their families. We, the educators, are 11.
Più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente. Più bello insieme.
My job is to create instruments that allow children and youngsters who have difficulties to express themselves, to communicate or to convey expressions and messages. So those who cannot verbalize their feelings and emotions, but have a good level of comprehension, people who have a lot to say too and can't live a normal life without communicating.
Hydrotherapy was born out of the idea of giving the children in rehabilitation an opportunity also in the water.
È più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente. È più bello insieme. È più bello insieme, un dono grande l'altra gente. È più bello insieme.
Formation is actually a big challenge, I believe, of the center. I mean, how to help people who come over here realize 2 things. On the one hand, to make them feel welcomed and at home amid all these activities, commitment, professionalism, and on the other hand, how to get them to at least put a question to themselves, or how to have the perception that there is a God who cares for them, who looks after them. I mean, all the good they receive is not only given out of people's generosity or their professional abilities, but rather these realities are all instruments in the hands of God, our Father.
Father Calabria's experience of God's paternity The consequences of that experience reach everywhere, even to some delicate issues of the church of his time. In many ways, Father Calabria envisioned many of the Second Vatican Council's resolutions. His great desire for ecumenism and unity within the church was one of them and is still today a very peculiar feature of our charism. In Italy, we have an interesting experience being developed in this regard. Let us see it.
This abbey was built by the year 1000 AD by the Benedictines. They remained here for a long time. Then it went to the Trappists, and later on in 1904 it went to the Cistercians. This house has two main purposes. It's a prayer house, a house for spiritual exercises, retreats, and an ecumenical center. And this is what we do. We welcome people who find themselves in need of going deeper in spiritual life, or also to stop for some time and pray, either with their community or on their own. In the abbey, we also paint icons, a very ancient art in the tradition of the church. We have two professional artists who come to our house both to paint and to teach it.